Hello, and thank you so much for joining me. We'll be looking at the system from the perspective of the employee's life cycle. And we'll start by looking at some of the typical self-service features made available to an employee. We'll then move into looking at some of the approval processes and reporting capabilities available in the system from the manager's perspective. And finally, we'll wrap up with the administrator's point of view, where we'll process the time and get it ready for payroll. There's a variety of different ways that punches can be collected and recorded into an employee's timesheet. For example, there are hardware devices which include simple swipe and biometric options, and employees can also use a mobile app to track their time. Of course, there is the traditional entry using the web as well. Now, utilizing this demo environment, I'm going to be showing you examples of self-service for employees, managers, and administrators. With that said, I'm going to begin by logging in as Ashley Nelson, one of our sample employees. When we log in as Ashley, we can see that there's a dashboard screen enabled for her, which is a really great way to access certain areas of the system that the employee uses most frequently. A dashboard can be configured for each individual employee based on their role and the type of things that they need to access within the system. You can also create custom menu options to provide easy navigation based upon how they would use the system. As Ashley, I can easily use the custom menu to navigate to my current timesheet. The timesheet that we're looking at here is most commonly used for hourly employees. It uses the server time, which adjusts for different time zones. By clicking on the Change Cost Center button, a list appears for Ashley to select from. This is a list of jobs or tasks that she'll be working on. So she can make her selection, and the system will automatically clock her out of the original cost center and into the new one that she selected from the list. Now keep in mind that you can relabel this Change Cost Center button to be whatever it is that makes sense for your organization. That may be a department, a job, or location. It can be labeled accordingly. Now that Ashley has reviewed the cost center she's changed her time into, she's also noticed that there's a change that needs to be requested for one of the in punches. She can easily enter a change request by using the button in the upper right hand corner. From here, we can select the drop down and select, in this case, Modify Punch In. All of the time entries for this current pay period are displaying, and Ashley can select the appropriate line item to adjust it accordingly. Let's say that she actually clocked back in from lunch at 12:45 p.m. Once she has entered the time that she wants that punch to be modified to, she can submit her change, which would go through an approval process. Employees have access to other self-service features within the system as well. Let's take a look at how an employee can request time off within the system. Ashley can access the time off screen from the My Time Off Start menu. The Request Time Off screen contains three parts. We see the Request tool on the left-hand side, the Time Off balances on the right, and Recent Requests towards the bottom. In order to put in a request, an employee would simply fill out the form on the left side, entering the type of time off that they would like to take. In this case, we'll select vacation from the list, the request type, and a date. Now underneath, you'll notice that a calendar is showing. This tells Ashley when she's currently scheduled to work versus when she's scheduled to be off. And in addition, a rule can be set up to allow only a set number of employees to be out on any given day. This calendar would highlight those days that may not be available. You can prevent the request from going through if there isn't enough time or coverage for that particular day, or you can allow the request to be submitted and pending manager's approval. Now, once the form is filled out, Ashley can also enter a comment. In this case, she's taking a long weekend. Once she's completed those steps, she can submit the request using the button in the upper right-hand corner. Once the request is submitted, an email notification will alert the manager that the time off request has been submitted and is ready for their review. Under the Balances window, the color-coded feature alerts approvers as to whether the employee has enough authorized time available. If enough time is authorized, a pending request would be reflected in green. If not, the request would appear in red. You can also prevent a request from going through if it would bring the employee into a negative balance. Also keep in mind that the employee has the ability to modify their time off request if necessary, and that can go through an approval process as well. Now that we looked at the system from more of an employee's perspective, let's switch gears and look at the manager's perspective. We'll log in as Jack Sutherland, the sample manager in this company. You'll notice that Jack has an extensive dashboard enabled for him. Every dashboard can be configured to meet each individual user's needs. In this case, Jack's dashboard is geared towards his managerial duties and puts all of the information that he needs to know about his employees right at his fingertips. Now remember, it is one employee login across the entire database, so Jack still has access to all of his employee self-service functionality as well. This is all located in the menu under My Account. From here, you'll see that he still does have access to his time off, his timesheets, and other self-service areas. Now going back to Jack's dashboard, you'll notice a customized menu that takes him to items that he accesses most often. He can view, for example, the attendance board to see exactly who's in and who's out of the office at any given time throughout the day. This information is available in real time. So if the employees are clocking in via the web or an Ethernet device, this information will be updated accordingly. This report is also available on the mobile app, so that managers can keep tabs on their employees while they're away from the office. Jack can also take a look at exceptions or attendance issues, such as who's tardy or absent. This report is color-coded for easy identification and will allow the manager to drill down into that employee's timesheet if needed. In addition to exception tracking, we can also flag any missing punches for easy management. We have a widget on the bottom of the dashboard that will flag any missing punches and allow us to make those corrections. Here we can see that Ashley has a missing punch. Maybe she left early due to a family emergency, or she simply forgot to punch out. Let's give her an out punch. Here is the missing punch on Tuesday the 3rd. We can simply enter the appropriate time and hit save. Now keep in mind that the system is capturing all of the changes in an audit trail. We can capture who made the change, when the changes were made, old versus new values, which IP addresses the changes were made from, and more. In addition, notes can be left against the timesheet to provide additional information about why a change was made. Now that the missing punch has been corrected, we're ready to take a look at the items pending our approval. This bell icon is our to-do items. What we'll see are all the items that Jack is responsible for. In this case, we can see right on the top the time off request that came through from Ashley. Now as the manager, Jack needs to review a couple of things in order to make an informed decision as to whether or not Ashley should get her time off approved. With that said, first Jack can click on the View Time Off Counts button. This will show him Ashley's balances. We can see again the green 8 and 1 indicating enough time for this request. Another item that will be important for Jack to look into is the number of other employees already off on that particular day. So we can click on this View Scheduled People icon to see who those employees are. Looks like both Jennifer and Dave are both already authorized to be off on that day. Remember, we do have an option to limit the number of employees that can be out on any given day. In this case, we'll use our manager discretion to approve the request. When clicking the Approve button, the system will prompt you for a comment. In this case, we can say, "Have fun," and click Approve. The system will automatically send an email back to the employee with the status of their request, and the time off will be updated on their timesheet accordingly. Keep in mind that you can set up several levels of approval based on your business needs. Once all of this has been approved, the time off can be exported to Outlook or Gmail calendar. Now that we've closed the requesting time off cycle, let's move on to taking a look at how a manager would approve timesheets. The manager can review timesheets right from here, or here is a more detailed report where a manager can review and approve or reject a timesheet. To select timesheets all at once, we simply click on this checkbox and all of the timesheets on this page will be selected for us. We can then use the approval button in the upper right hand corner to move these along. Once approved, the timesheet will be passed through the approval process, and once it reaches final approval, these timesheets will then be ready for payroll. Let's take a look at how Jack can run other reports. Going back to our dashboard, there are several reports that Jack uses most often. Let's go into this detailed hours report. With any given report, you can use filters to gather the appropriate data. The first filter is an employee filter, which allows you to sort by specific employees. Next, you'll see a filter for timesheet dates, where you can sort by pay period, calendar range, or date range. In addition to these filters, you can also search through the report for specific criteria. Let's look at the first name column. Here we can see that there are several different items that we can select as filters. In this case, I will select starts with. Suppose I want to search for Ashley's time cards. I can start by putting in the first couple letters of her name and hitting enter to activate the filter. Now we can see all of Ashley's time entries, where she worked, how many hours she worked, and more. There's even a subtotal which will calculate the total number of hours Ashley worked based on the date range that we defined within this report. Let's remove this filter, and I'll show you how easy it is to customize this report to get it just the way we want it. You can easily add additional columns into this report by selecting the Select Columns button on the top of the screen. On the right-hand side, we have the columns that are currently selected. On the left is where we can look for and add additional columns. Say we wanted to add the hourly pay to this report. We can look for our column, click on the arrow, and then even move it into place. Let's say we want that to come right after last name. Once we're done, we can select the columns, and here is the hourly pay column in the spot that we selected. Now, in addition, focusing on the columns themselves, you'll notice that we have a couple of arrows going up and down. This is where you can actually sort, either ascending or descending. The G stands for group, and the X stands for hide columns. Let's group this report by the default jobs. Now that the report is grouped by department, there's a subtotal row for each grouping, which displays the total number of hours worked in that particular job for the time frame specified in the timesheet dates filter above. Now, once you set up a report the way you need it to be, you can always save those settings. If you go under Settings, this is where you can save it with a particular name, make it the default when you log into this area of the system, and have it run immediately when you do so. Once you're ready, you can save that, and it'll be available to you moving forward. You can also export your reports. Clicking on the button in the upper right hand corner gives you several options from which you can choose. It's as simple as that. Now that we've taken a look at the managerial experience, let's look at the administrative process. I'm going to log out as Jack and log in as Kathy Watts. So from an administration perspective, I'd like to walk you through the time prep process, which is where an admin will go through the checks and balances to ensure that all of the data that has been collected throughout the pay period is accurate and ready for payroll. Again, we see a dashboard screen for Kathy, and she has a process time link, which will display all of the open pay periods. Typically, you would only see one or two. We're going to process the weekly pay period listed here by clicking on the Pay Period Functions button, which is to the far left. Here is a dashboard type screen which consists of the basic steps needed to process time. The very first step is to review the timesheet status. This checks the status of the timesheet. So for example, it looks at which timesheets are ready for payroll, which ones are still open, etc. If there are any timesheets that are still open, that means that the manager did not yet approve them. We can look at all of these timesheets and who is responsible for them by clicking on the link. Once in this area, you'll notice an approvers link. Clicking on that will tell us who the approvers are for that particular timesheet. So Kathy can go back to the appropriate managers and ensure that they review these timesheets, or she can take matters into her own hands. If we close this box, what we can do is select the appropriate timesheets, either all or a small subset, and use the Approve button in the upper right to approve these. Let's go back to the time prep process to see what other steps are needed to be completed. The next step here is processing records. Processing records allows the system to group the data accordingly and get it ready for payroll. The system will look to the pay calculations that are in place to calculate the rounding and overtime rules, etc. The step after this would be to review the results, which will give an overview of the calculated hours prior to exporting the information to payroll and display any errors, such as missing punches, that may have slipped through the cracks. Kathy can click on the hyperlink to address any errors that may have been flagged by the system. Next in the process is to create the payroll interface file. This would be the file which would be exported out to payroll. The very last step in this process is an important one. It allows the admin to lock down the timesheets, which prevents any other modifications from being made to this particular pay period. Now that we've seen that process, it concludes today's demonstration. Thank you again for your time.